forward to that presentation and enjoy Kurt Stübel.
Thank you very much. Welcome, the large audience on a Sunday morning. It's wonderful to have you here. Well, it's one repetition maximum. Does it make sense? Is it beneficial at all? Can I actually define intensities by means of this one repetition maximum test? What is it? It's simply a concentric maximum test. I take a weight, I can move exactly once, no more than that. And that, of course, is the 100% level of intensity. This is what you read in all the textbooks. And out of the 100%, we calculate down and scale it down successively. You do your training at 80%, you will achieve this. You take 60% of this one repetition maximum, and you will achieve this and this. And the prerequisite for the one repetition maximum test is that I need good knowledge of the equipment. I need perfect technique. I need a reasonable warming up set. And this means that such a test doesn't make any sense for all beginners and untrained people. They cannot even do it. Just imagine your mum, pays a visit to a studio and does one repetition maximum test on a leg press. If I was that person, I would never, ever come back. Never. It's a relatively clear thing. It's all settled. So, and then in literature, you find derived intensities. What does it mean when I work with 80 to 100%? I've got an IC training, and when I work with 60 to 80%, I've got a muscle mass training, hypertrophy training. When I use 40 to 60% out of the 100%, it leads me to physical endurance and strength. In literature, there are different figures, but in most of the cases, people use this one. The question is it possible? Is it really true? Does it work out? Because we are not cognizant of the fact that what happens inside the body is subject to the right choice of repetitions. And this doesn't have anything to do with these percentage levels. And in this particular field and strength training, it's important that when I want to achieve perfect adjustment, I have to work up to the repetition maximum so that no further repetition is possible. So mass training, 10 repetitions, the number 11 is good. 10 is not going to work. Number 10, yes, but 11 and 12, it's a no. And this is the repetition maximum. And this is what the proponents of the one repetition maximum test write in their books. And in accordance with this approach, each and every athlete, when I test him or her and then move down to 80%, all of them would have to be able to do a certain number of repetitions, and it would have to be the same for everybody. So 80% would actually mean circa about 10 repetitions, and it would have to apply to everybody, because only then intensity would be right. The same applies to 60% or to 40%. Well, our own tests. I am working at the School for Sports and Gymnastics Teachers, and we tested more than 1,000 students, sports students, with this. And what we revealed is that the range of the number of repetitions when I start from the 100% take 70 or more 50%, that it's a major difference regarding the range. And we tested the leg press here. Well, we did one repetition maximum with the leg press. We took 50% of the weight and tried to find out how many repetitions are our athletes able to do based on the 50%. And the range was between 27 up to 220 repetitions. And in accordance with the literature, it would be the same intensity, which implies it doesn't matter whether I do 27 or 220 repetitions. And this is ridiculous. It's a joke. And then bank pressing, we also tried it there, and we had a range of between 17 and 57 repetitions. It's far too large. It can never ever bring about the same intensity. Then leg extensions as an isolated exercise, we had 23 to 52 repetitions, and literature tells us it's the same intensity level. Yeah, and then lat pulley, and also a major difference. We had a range of between 18 and 84 repetitions. Let me add, we have got, well, then future sports teachers. Some of them were experienced in strength training, others not. But once we interpret the results, we felt it doesn't play such a major role here. In general, we have the following picture. We could see when we chose muscle loop exercise, bank pressing, lat pulleys or squats, the differences were much larger due to the fact probably that many more muscles are involved. And then when we had lower body exercises, there were larger differences than with regard to upper body exercises, maybe due to the fact that the legs for moving further are then strong muscles, quadriceps and the glutes. Well, there's power in there, and on the upper body parts it's not the same. And what also played, it didn't play a major role, it was immaterial whether our sports students had prior experiences, whether they were already able to do lat pulleys. Didn't play any role, and all sports students were highly motivated indeed, and of course voluntarily participated in our study. We didn't force anybody to do so, so we didn't have any falsified and distorted results. We had a total of 1,000 students. It's a huge number, and it gives you some indications and findings. So what does literature tell us? What's so strange and stupid about it is that in 8 to 9 out of 10 books, we still have the 1 repetition maximum test for defining intensity levels. And when you see my findings, you have to admit, well, somehow it doesn't work out. And now we see what others say. Stepani, 2016, we says the derivation of intensities of the 1 repetition maximum is only suitable to the weight lifters and then power lifters, because they're used to high weights anyway during the trainings, and then I can do it. But I have to repeat the tests very often to have the right weight. For all the others, it doesn't make any sense, he says. Well, then Gottlob, actually, you have to see it here. He said, well, the number of repetition differs. Well, we have, for example, 70% of maximum load. We've got major differences between individual exercises and participants. Just my results. Or Suter and Diemer, they say there's a disproportionate amount of fluctuation in there. There's variation. I cannot use this test. It's such a wide range, just what I found out. It doesn't work. And then I come in here, right? Well, tests and my own experience clearly tell me that intensity definition based on the 1 repetition maximum test doesn't make any sense. It's a myth in literature. When you write something down and apply it, then you are out there, well, on the wrong path, so to speak, because it doesn't work out. And I've got other lecturers, Fröhlich wrote about it, Burke-Behrens and Buskis, they wrote about it. And what is really important here, that if I applied it the way people tell me, and if I am aware of the fact that once we've got 13 and then 61 repetitions, leg press 13, and you would have 61 with 70% strain, you would engage in hypertrophy training and you wouldn't engage in strength training anymore. So that's it. So it's no stimulus which is efficient to build up your strength. And this is dramatic, of course, because what do customers actually want? They want to achieve an objective, a goal they set for themselves. And I have to use the right intensity level for doing so. Then Ratlinger also came in. We can skip this one. It's all the same. And now the problem is, how do I define and establish my intensity levels? I have to ascertain them somehow. There are some who take the OmniRaise scale. It's then based on the Borg scale for endurance athletes. It's a subjective scale where you yourself estimate how strenuous and exerting things are. Subjective assessment assessments only work when the customers can also assess strains. How are they supposed to do it when they sit there on a leg press when they've never ever felt this strain before? It's something I can use for advanced athletes with a certain feel for their body, but not for beginners, because they have to develop the feeling for their own body. When I've got customers who for 10 years were only sitting around in offices, well, how should they have developed a sensation and a feel for their own bodies? And then some authors come up with diagrams and they say so and so many repetitions are equivalent to this. It's like a pyramid with a peak on top, and right there it would mean that a certain number of repetition would imply a certain tension in the muscle. We said before it doesn't work like that, so we have to do it differently somehow. And then repetition maximum comes in. This is a term. Once I know that a certain number of repetitions has got a certain impact on my body, which it triggers, I need a certain training in a target range, and this is where my repetition maximum has to be, which means I need a certain number of repetitions for a specific biopositive adaptation, depending on the goals set by the customers. Now, when you sift through literature again, you find 1 to 5 repetitions intramuscular coordination. This is maximum strength training, no mass neuronal adjustment. It would be great for an advanced female athlete that wants to firm up her body. Well, then 6 to 15, a maximum of 20 repetitions. Hypertrophy training, this is mass training, and this can be subdivided into an hypertrophy training for beginners and for advanced athletes. When I've got a newcomer, I start with the lower one. Where is it? Well, here that's the 12 to 20, and when I've got somebody who's in advanced stage, I take the 6 to 12 repetitions. Then the next target area is in strength endurance. It's between 15 and 30 or 20 to 30 repetitions, perfect blood flow, no mass, and if at all, only little increase in mass depending on genetics. And an athlete now should be in the desired target range depending on what they want to have. And then we get this nice little picture. I will perform strength training between 1 and 30 repetitions. This is where strength training takes place. When I've got 1 to 5, it would be the maximum strength training. 5 to 20, hypertrophy training, and moving up to 30, it's strength endurance training. And you have to be in there depending on the target you actually pursue. But the problem still is, how do I ascertain the intensity levels? Because I need the weights to go with the training. And for finding out which weights are the right one, I've got a 4-stage, 4-step plan. And stage number 1 is an exact history taking, an exact anamnesis. The more input I get from the customer, the better I can detect deficiencies, shortcomings, restrictions, and I know how to train this person afterwards, because this anamnesis gives me the strain the customer can take. Maybe some methods cannot be used because I cannot put strain on some of the joints, and for this purpose I need an anamnesis. The next one would be a test battery. I have to conduct tests because the tests give me a wonderful insight into the 40s, the strengths, the weaknesses of the individual. Where do I have to put in more training? What can I ask this person to do? There is, a test, a push-up, a test, and when my individual can only make 3 of them, I don't need a high level of weight. In bank pressing, I can say, as poor as this performance is, you need a very low weight indeed. So this test battery can be manual, like a push-up, bending manual tests, or you can have then equipment-based tests. Where they're looking around here, there are so many instrument-based, tests, well, from 30 to 20,000 euros for this equipment, depending on your studio. I've got imbalances, I've got strengths, weaknesses, which muscles should be more or less trained, and how intense should the strain be. So based on the tests, I can, well, defer some of the weights I can use. I've got some sort of idea of the customers. And then stage number 3 is formulation of targets. I've got the customer in front of me, I've got an anamnesis, I super tested the individual, and my customer tells me, I do not want to gain in terms of mass. Many women, no mass, fine with me. I need a target range for that. Beginners don't want to gain in terms of muscle mass. What does it imply? The repetition maximum has to be between 20 and 30 repetitions. So I look for a weight so that with each and every exercise, they are this particular range. Once I've got a beginner who wants to gain mass, it's 12 to 20 repetitions they have to do. Why? Because he's working with lighter weights, gains mass, but it doesn't gain the mass too quickly. When I immediately work too fast with 16-year-olds in hypertrophy, they get tears in their skins. Well, they put too much strains on the patella, tendon, and so on. 3 months of training in the wrong range are enough to cause all these problems. If I had an advanced individual who doesn't want to gain mass but basic training right at the beginning doing periodization, this is when you do it, when you prepare for harder methods of training, then it's strength endurance, 20 to 30 repetitions. Often 4 to 6 weeks are enough, and then they can move on to other training methods. So when the advanced individual says, I want to gain muscle mass, optimum range 6 to 12 repetitions. This is when the muscle grows fastest. 10 repetitions, they say, is perfect. Then the advanced individuals that want to firm up muscles and gain maximum strength without mass, young men, they look very good and handsome. They said, I don't want to have any more, but I want to gain in strength. Then maybe a nurse of women, for years in the studios, but they do not want to gain mass and so on. Come on, the prerequisites are there, knowledge of the equipment, a good passive musculoskeletal system, all fine. And then we have an advanced individual who wants to gain mass slowly, take his or her time, and then they've got to 12 to 20 repetitions. They take their time and lean back. And now we've got stage number 4. It's called try and error, which means I set up a training plan, lat pulley, bank presses, leg press, God knows what. I've got the target formulation. I know 20 to 30 reps, and I only need the weight for this particular training to give you this exact range. There I have to do some testing, but what helps me, I conducted the tests prior to that. I can have an opinion and I can say, okay, in the test it was so poor, I need only a little and a small weight, and based on a little bit of experience, you find out quickly. So I have to do it for each and every exercise. I have to find a weight to give us the right target range for this particular individual we're dealing with. Now, what's important? Well, there's a range, let's say 20 to 30 reps, and now the customer starts with 22 repetitions. He's in the right target range, and now the customer has to try in each and every training to achieve this repetition maximum. And he will experience the supercompensation effect, and he will enhance his performance. Next time there will be 24 reps, then 25 to 27. And as soon as they have reached the upper limit, they have to increase the weight so that we have got the lower end of the range. And so you are always in the right target range until another target is formulated, and I take another range, of course. So here, some reading material for you. And before I let you go, I finished early. There is one additional point that is very important. That is when we have reached this stage right here. Well, you can take photos, no problem. But you can also take a look at the whole presentation. Well, you can listen to the whole presentation again on the web. Of course, time under tension is also of importance. Jens Vatter underlined it yesterday. What is the benefit of performing 10 reps, perfect mass training, but I perform the repetitions too fast, then the stimulus is too short and there's no perfect hypertrophy of the muscle. I need 10 reps, 5 to 7 seconds, and one set gives me 50 to 70 seconds. It's a super thing. But if I want to train speed, it would be stupid to have a long time under tension. There I have to perform the movements very quickly, or EC training, 1 to 5 repetitions. It's a contradiction in itself to move high weight slowly. Well, think of the weightlifters. They snatch up the things. So IC training, is to be performed fast, nearly in an explosive way. In addition to the perfect range, I always require the perfect time under tension. And when we move up to the strength endurance training, well, physical endurance should be between 1.5 and 2 minutes. Now, it somewhat depends on whether I've got a beginner, older individual, their blood flow circulation plays another role. I could then increase stimuli and say there is more blood flow through the longer period of time, and energy provision gains more weight, so to speak. You can play a little bit with it, and when a handball player engages in endurance training, he might choose a shorter time under tension. So it's not only the right number of repetitions, but also how long is the set to last. Slow performance of repetitions always has one benefit, that beginners perform the exercise correctly. I would never ever have a beginner perform swift movements, but then do it slowly to get used to motion quality, to technique, which is rightly applied. But when I'm working with a person for a longer time, why shouldn't I play around with speed and pace and do some different trainings? Quick training, I reach the FT fibers. In endurance training, well, these FT fibers, they're chilling. They are there and they don't do anything lifelong. And even a 50 to 60-year-old woman, when she is fit, I can then give her fast movements once the orthopedic and the physical prerequisites are met, so that I have another innovation pattern, so to speak, that I can activate different muscle fibers, and this is also meaningful. But for this purpose, you have to be experienced. You have to think about, well, can I ask this of the particular individual? Do they have the perfect technique? Can they perfectly stabilize? And then I can really play around nicely. And this is really something reasonable that does make sense. Okay, as I said before, you can have everything again on the internet. Thank you very much for listening. I'm happy to have, nonetheless, had such a large audience, and I wish you a wonderful day at the trade show. Well, should you have a question, I'll be available up front there.